Hey Marissa, thanks for your reflection. Um, I was hoping I could tell you a little bit more about Rigor and DOK because I feel badly that you didn't quite get them, especially because Rigor is a big buzzword in the education community, and you're gonna hear about it again. When I was teaching in the high school, my APs would come through with like graphs, and they would have rigor on one side and they would have number of students on the other side, and they would literally come into my classroom and they would mark like how many students were working at what level of rigor, because they wanted to make sure that all classes were rigorous, which we want. But I want to explain a little bit more what that is. So an example that I was thinking about: when I taught photography, I wanted students to understand the physics of light and how light actually moves. And so that's something that kids have never heard of before, and that light travels in a straight line. So I started out with very basic things like light travels in a straight line when it moves through a pinhole, which would be our camera lens. It doesn't bend, it doesn't flip over, it travels in a straight line. And that's why when we see our film, the image is actually upside down on film because of, I had this whole diagram and all these things. And so when I would give them their very first quiz, it was very basic. It was a DOK level of 1, because I would ask, light travels in a blank line. And the answer was straight, which is something that I said over and over and over. That's very basic. By the end of the 6-week unit, and by the time we were finished, students built a pinhole camera out of duct tape, black paper, and cardboard, and it even had a zoom lens and a piece of tin foil that we poked a teeny tiny pinhole in. And we went outside and we did experiments taking photographs with a camera that they built out of cardboard, and they would have to do these experiments and figure out the timing. And they would ask questions like, what if I put 2 holes in my camera? What if I cover the camera lens and expose it twice? What if I move the camera while I'm doing the exposure? And all of these questions are also wondering, how does light move, or how can I manipulate the movement of light in these different ways to produce different effects, which would be a DOK level of 4, doing these experiments and figuring out how light moves. So I didn't teach light travels in a straight line over and over and over, just in varying levels of like different ways of asking it. But I would start with something very basic, and by the end, students understood completely, wholeheartedly, internally how light moves and how they can manipulate light to create different things inside of a camera that they built for themselves. So when you ask like what Native Americans were originally settled in the Ohio River Valley, they can answer on a piece of paper, Miami Indians were here. But if you ask them to look at all these different documents, say primary sources on treaties that the U.S. government made with the Indians, the Native Americans, and why Native Americans didn't trust the U.S. government, then you're asking them to take all of these documents, synthesize all of this information, and come up with an answer for a very complicated question. And that's, what kind of Indians lived here, DOK level 1, synthesize all of these primary source documents to answer the question, why did Native Americans not trust the U.S. government, which is a huge answer. So I hope that helps. I know you're going to hear about rigor and DOK levels again, and you'll probably hear about it in your teaching experience in your career. So hopefully this helps. And Yeah, if you ever need anything, feel free to email me, scunnin at ius, no, iu.edu.